Bonjour! Welcome to Rambo Loves History. I am your favorite French bulldog that takes you through mind-blowing history with style. Welcome back to Rambo Loves History. Here's something shocking. The nation we call Lebanon was never supposed to exist. French colonial mapmakers accidentally created one of history's most fascinating experiments in religious coexistence. And as a French bulldog who sometimes struggles to coexist with the neighbor's cat, I have tremendous respect for what they attempted. Today we're unraveling how a small strip of Mediterranean coastline, no larger than Connecticut, became the crucible where East met West, where Christianity and Islam learned to dance together, and where that dance sometimes turned deadly. To understand Lebanon, we must first understand its geography. Picture a narrow coastal plain pressed against the Mediterranean, backed by two parallel mountain ranges running north to south. These mountains weren't just scenic backdrops. They were refuges where religious minorities could flee when persecution came calling. And in this part of the world, persecution always came calling. 3,000 years before Christ, this land gave birth to something remarkable. The people of Byblos, one of humanity's oldest continuously inhabited cities, were building sophisticated urban settlements. By 1200 BCE, as great empires crumbled in the Bronze Age collapse, the people of this coastline did something extraordinary. They didn't retreat, they expanded. These were the Phoenicians, and they would change the world. Their two great cities, Tyre and Sidon, became the New York and London of the ancient Mediterranean. Phoenician merchants sailed to places others only dreamed of. They established Carthage in North Africa. They traded tin in distant Britain. According to Herodotus, they even circumnavigated Africa 2,000 years before Vasco da Gama. But here's what's incredible about the Phoenicians. Their greatest gift wasn't their purple dye, extracted from murex sea snails and worth more than gold. It wasn't even their maritime prowess. It was the alphabet. Those markings Phoenician merchants used to keep track of accounts would evolve into the letters you're hearing right now. Every time we write, we use descendants of Phoenician symbols, arguably humanity's most important innovation. The Phoenicians possessed another crucial trait that would echo through Lebanese history: adaptability. When Assyrians conquered them, they became Assyrian in manner while remaining Phoenician in spirit. When Persians came, they served Persian kings while maintaining commercial networks. When Alexander arrived, they Hellenized. When Rome conquered, they Romanized. This wasn't weakness, it was survival through flexibility, a Lebanese characteristic that would endure for millennia. Then came Jesus of Nazareth. The Gospel of Mark tells us Jesus himself traveled to Tyre and Sidon, where he encountered a Syrophoenician woman whose faith impressed him. Within decades of Christ's death, Lebanese converts were establishing some of Christianity's first communities outside Palestine. In the 4th century, a Syrian hermit named Maron retreated to the mountains to pursue prayer. His followers, the Maronites, developed their own liturgy and fierce independence, maintaining communion with Rome while keeping Eastern traditions. In 636 CE, Arab armies swept north from Arabia, bringing Islam. The conquest was swift, but conversion was gradual. Unlike other territories, Lebanon's Christians weren't simply overwhelmed. The mountains gave them space to persist, to negotiate, to maintain their identity. Then, in the 11th century, the Druze emerged, followers of the Fatimid Caliph al-Hakim, whom they believed divine. When mainstream Islam rejected their teachings, the Druze found refuge where so many others had, in Lebanon's mountains. By the medieval period, Lebanon had become something unprecedented, a land where Christians weren't merely tolerated minorities but formed powerful, autonomous communities. When Crusaders arrived in 1099, they found natural allies among Maronites. When Crusaders left 2 centuries later, Lebanese Christians didn't collapse. They had learned the Lebanese art: bend but don't break, adapt but don't assimilate. The Ottoman period, beginning in 1516, brought 4 centuries of relative stability. The Turks instituted the millet system, allowing each religious community to govern its own affairs. Under this system, Lebanon prospered. Now here's where the dream takes shape. A Lebanese Druze prince named Fakhr al-Din II, who ruled from 1590 to 1635, was a visionary who dreamed of independent Lebanon. He modernized agriculture, invited European advisors, and most remarkably promoted religious tolerance. Christians, Muslims, and Druze served in his administration. The Ottomans eventually executed him, but the seed was planted. Lebanese had seen what was possible when they worked together. The 19th century brought European influence and new ideas about nationalism. Lebanese Christians looked to France as protector. Muslims looked to the broader Arab world. The Druze navigated between both. These divergent orientations would define Lebanon's modern tragedy. Crisis came in 1860. Economic tensions, European meddling, and religious zealotry produced horrific sectarian war. 10 to 20,000 dead. But rather than partition the land, Ottoman authorities created something new, an autonomous province with a Christian governor but religiously mixed council. It was an experiment in power sharing that would become the blueprint for modern Lebanon. World War I changed everything. As the Ottoman Empire collapsed, France claimed Lebanon as its mandate. French administrators made a fateful decision. They expanded Lebanon beyond its mountain heartland, adding coastal cities, the Bekaa Valley, and the south. This greater Lebanon now included large Muslim populations who had never wanted to be part of a Christian-dominated state. On September 1, 1920, French General Henri Gouraud proclaimed the State of Greater Lebanon. It was artificial. The National Pact of 1943 divided power along confessional lines. The president would always be Maronite Christian, the prime minister Sunni Muslim, the speaker of parliament Shia Muslim. Every government job would be allocated by religious quota. It was a system built on fiction, that Lebanon's demographics were frozen based on a 1932 census, the last census Lebanon would ever conduct. But demographics don't freeze. Muslim birth rates were higher. Palestinian refugees arrived after 1948. The Christian percentage declined, but the political system didn't adjust. From 1945 to 1975, Beirut transformed into the Paris of the Middle East. Banks made it the financial capital of the Arab world. Lebanese merchants built trading networks spanning the globe. For a brief moment, the Lebanese formula seemed to work, but beneath the surface, contradictions festered. Palestinian refugees upset the demographic balance and brought armed struggle against Israel. Lebanese Muslims questioned permanent Christian dominance. Lebanese Christians feared any change. And then it all fell apart. April 13, 1975, a bus carrying Palestinians through a Christian neighborhood. Gunmen opened fire, 27 dead. The Lebanese Civil War had begun. 15 years of hell transformed Lebanon from the Switzerland of the Middle East into a byword for chaos. The Civil War wasn't simply Muslims versus Christians, it was a kaleidoscope of shifting alliances and foreign interventions. Syria occupied the north and east. Israel invaded the south. Iranian revolutionaries created Hezbollah. American Marines arrived as peacekeepers and left after 241 were killed in a 1983 suicide bombing. At one point, over 40 militias operated in a country smaller than Connecticut. The war's end in 1990 brought exhaustion, not victory. The Taif Agreement modified power sharing but kept the confessional system intact. Syria occupied the country for 15 years. An estimated 120,000 died. Lebanon had survived, but at what cost? The Cedar Revolution of 2005 offered hope. After Syria assassinated Prime Minister Rafik Hariri, Lebanese of all sects united to demand Syrian withdrawal. For a moment, the old dream flickered back to life. Christians, Muslims, and Druze stood together in Martyrs Square. Syria withdrew its troops, but the moment passed. Hezbollah, armed by Iran, had become a state within a state. The 2006 war with Israel devastated infrastructure. The Syrian civil war after 2011 sent over 1 million refugees into Lebanon. The economy, built on unsustainable debt and corruption, finally collapsed in 2019, wiping out savings and causing the currency to lose over 90% of its value. Today, Lebanon teeters on the edge of failed statehood, yet Lebanon endures. Despite everything, invasions, civil wars, economic collapse, the Lebanese formula of coexistence, battered and bloodied, somehow persists. Churches and mosques still stand side by side. The descendants of the Phoenicians still look to the sea, and Lebanese emigrants, perhaps 15 million in the diaspora compared to 4 million in Lebanon, remain fiercely attached to their homeland. What Lebanon proved is that religious coexistence is possible but fragile, requiring constant negotiation and perpetual compromise. Lebanon's tragedy wasn't that different religions couldn't live together. For centuries they did. The tragedy was that when the formula failed to evolve, when political elites prioritized sectarian power over national interest, when foreign powers interfered, and when the system became synonymous with corruption, the center could not hold. Perhaps that's Lebanon's ultimate gift, not purple dye or the alphabet, but proof that coexistence is possible and a warning of how easily it can be lost. Lebanon remains what it has always been, a beautiful, tragic experiment in whether people of different faiths can share the same small piece of earth. If this story moved you, check out our Armenia video, another nation that survived against impossible odds. Click it now and subscribe so you never miss Rambo's history lessons.